So good morning everyone. Again, welcome to the second day of Lannang Symposium 2024. So just a short recap. Yesterday we had a very rich first day of the symposium. We had the keynote and we had breakout sessions as well as panel discussion. So today we will be doing the same structure. So with the plenary entitled Navigating the Lannang Limbo, the Social-Linguistic Construction and Development of Chinese and Lannang Identities. So let me just briefly introduce our speaker. Of course, you all know him. Professor Dr. Wilkinson Wong Gonzales, who is an Assistant Professor of Applied English Linguistics at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So Will took his PhD in linguistics and graduate certificates in data science and cognitive science at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and then he moved to Hong Kong to teach at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. In terms of research interests, Will is interested in social linguistics in the Philippines and in wider East Asia, and he employs corpus-based, experimental, ethnographic, and computational techniques on diverse data sets, including natural speech data and social media data. So we all know Will, and let's listen to his presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, good morning everyone. Ozaki. So today I'll be talking a little bit about my research. So the title of the talk is Navigating the Lannang Limbo, the Social-Linguistic Construction and Development of Chinese and Lannang Identities. The two questions that I'm interested in answering are the following. So first, what does it mean to be Chinese with single codes and speak Chinese in the Philippines? Two, what does it mean to be Lannang and speak Lannang in the Philippines? So there are some unanswered questions that stem from these two questions. So first question is, does being Chinese have to do with quote-unquote blood? Having lived in certain places? Having to do with language or culture in general? And we can also ask the same question for speaking Chinese, right? Does speaking Chinese have to do with speaking a set of languages, or do you have to really speak a certain style or a certain kind or type of language? Does this also entail avoiding any influence of Filipino or English? So the objectives of this talk are a bit modest. First objective is to examine the notion of Chinese as an identity and as a language, and to shed light on the linguistic and social dimensions of negotiating Chineseness. And so basically the goal is to examine how multilingualism and community attitudes and ideologies or belief systems interact in the construction and negotiation of Chineseness and the definition of Chinese in the Manila Lannang community. So again, my research is focused on Metro Manila. I don't know what the situation is in Zamboanga, in Cebu, in Iloilo, but for now, I'll just be focusing on the Metropolitan Manila Lannang community. So yeah. Hopefully through this presentation, I'll be encouraging you to reflect and see whether reflect on the relationship between language and identity. So I think some people in this room I've actually interviewed already. It was in 2017 to 2022. I was conducting research in different community hotspots like elderly centers, in churches, in community centers. Everywhere basically. So the methodology, the data set that I'll be analyzing has been derived from the following, has been developed from the following methodology, right? So I adopted ethnography, positioned myself as a participant researcher because I'm also positioning myself as Lannang when I could interview them. So I always talk about Lannang. So that way it'll be, some people say that you can actually get more natural data when you say that you're a part of the community and they'll give you more insights. Okay? The second type of method is semi-structured interview. So I have a set of questions, and basically I don't just stick to these questions. If people want to veer off to another topic, then I allow them to talk about other things that could be related to what I have. I also adopted frog story narration, so basically a picture book, and asking them to tell a story without any text written. Just ask them to tell a story in Lannang, and then they will use whatever kind of Lannang they use to tell a story. And all this data has been compiled into a corpus, or basically what I like to call the Lannang corpus, which is a data bank or a data set. That's what it means, okay? And finally, social linguistic survey data. So apart from interviewing them, I also ask for information such as religion, age, group, ethnic identity, and a couple of other things as well. So for frog story narration, this is the kind of like story that this is about a boy and his frog, and the frog got lost, and then the boy is trying to find the frog. So I asked my participants to look at the story and try to come up with a story based on this using Lannang. So just to summarize, in other words, for this project, basically, presentation, I will show you the linguistic and social linguistic situation among the contemporary Manila Lannangs, based simply on this data set I've collected. And I will hopefully tell you what it means to be Chinese and speak Chinese from the patterns identified from this particular group from the bottom up. Of course, I have some disclaimers. I put signal codes around Chinese to emphasize its dynamic and potential localized meaning. So it's very similar to Lannang, right? When we say Lannang, it doesn't necessarily mean like Chinese. Chinese, it most likely mean Philippine Chinese or localized Chinese. And I try to avoid using Chinese as a preferred language. So if you see me switching between Lannang and Chinese, that's intentional. I really wanted to avoid using Chinese in particular because I want this presentation to be more internalized, like coming from within rather than using terms that other people have started to us. Okay, so let's start with some linguistic findings. So what do people do, you think, when we ask them to tell a story in Lannang? So, short, Crystal's version of that, there's a lot of variation, okay? So here are actual audio samples from the collection task, elicitation task. So we have people who just use pure Hokkien style of like Lannang to narrate the story. So just for people at the back, so I'm sure you cannot see what's in the front, those in blue basically represent Hokkien-derived Lannang words. Those in yellow are English-derived Lannang words. And those in red, which you'll see later, are Tagalog-derived Lannang words. So I'll play the first one. This is one sample.
这个故事是关于一个囡仔，伊有一只狗，有一日仔因掠到一只长蛤蟆，一种长蛤蟆起哩，然后大玻璃干。
Okay, the second one has some English borrowings.
这个囡仔，一阵啊，伊咧看迄只狗，迄只狗是咧看迄只长蛤蟆。但迄个囡仔咧困的时阵，叫迄只狗咧困，迄只长蛤蟆才踮迄个 container 出来。
Oh, right. And then obviously we have the other end of the spectrum where we have higher levels of mixing.
一只狗啊，一个大布囡啊，再一个叫啥？一脚木呐，然后一只巴拉甲的熊，一领西衫饲伫涂骹咧，
Okay, and then this is I think the most mixed person that I interviewed. Basically, it's really interesting how this person deployed different linguistic resources in Lannang.
这个故事嗰是 inspired by 一个好朋友個名字 Phyllis Overman 個呐，伊去創一個這個別人體育咯，安尼啦，別人啊，別人嚟影響個，伊啲講過呐，一日個一囡仔叫伊狗個，幼飼一隻巴拉格個。 因為兩個人喺困的時陣，嗰隻巴拉格哥都抽出去了。 迄阵迄个囡仔交迄个狗起来的时阵个，你找无迄只安怎落个别人甲阮找啊，好行人迄只狗个，伊的头搭藏入去一个 glass aquarium 个，过落来伊嘛是得。
Okay, so as you can see, there's really a wide range of ways to use Lannang, different styles of Lannang. We have some speakers using a very pure style of Lannang, while others, you can see the last one, a very mixed variety, and also those in between, right? And we see variability, but if you actually pay closer attention, there are actually some patterns that you can identify, but also some variability, as we've seen earlier. So in my PhD research, I've actually attempted to find patterns that most people, at least a lot of people, would use based on my sample of 140 Lannang participants. And one of them is the borrowing. So how does the Lannang deal with words that are from Tagalog and English, right? So ever wondered why sometimes we pronounce words with a falling tone, or sometimes with a high tone at the end of the word? So for example, in the Tagalog word, kalapa, how do you say dove in Lannang way? Is it kalapati or kalapati? Right? So here, for a lot of people, it's kalapati, itaka, basu. So what? And then for English, very similar, charity, umbrella, marshmallow. So, but however, if you actually, for words, Tagalog and English words that have L, R, or Y, or N sounds, or R sounds. For Tagalog, it's a high tone. So, pahabol, for example. Atay, you don't say atay, it's kind of weird. Or carton, right? But then for English, it's a little bit different. Syllable, you say syllable. Most of the time, like when I do the interviews, enjoy, intervention. However, if for all other consonants like S, T, P, S, it's all high tones, but regardless of the word. So for Tagalog, it's singkamas, kalat, tanggap, syllables. It's a syllable, it's an S, right? So diplomat and unwrap, right? So this is like a general tendency, but obviously there are some variations. Like younger people tend to just use high tone for everything, but middle-aged people, older people tend to follow some kind of interesting pattern when it regards to like Hokkien and Tagalog and English borrowing. So this, I argue, is some kind of innovation that Lannangs in the Philippines have created, right? So here's a summary, right? For if it ends with a vowel, it's all falling tone. If it ends with L, Y, and R, or sonorants, basically, then it depends on which language it's from. And then if it ends with any other consonant, it's high tone. That's kind of like the grammar of it, I think, based on my research so far. And then for vocabulary, you also notice that certain words, it's highly probabilistic, but there are some tendencies, right? So for example, based on a sample of 20 people, when asked whether they would use a certain word in Hokkien, Tagalog, or English, there are some patterns. So for example, the word for all, song, right? Or taike or whatever, is 100% Hokkien. But for certain words, for example, like ashes, in Hokkien, but no one, according to my sample, no one would really use it. 80% would just use the English variant of it. And then we also have words like belly, like pakto, 94% would use more the Hokkien variant than Tagalog or English variant. And words like, for example, pero, kasi Tagalog, right? More Tagalog source. So there are tendencies for the community to use certain words from certain language sources. Here, from a lexicogrammatical level, or adverb level, so word for still in English, sometimes people use yapo, shame, but sometimes other people just use pa at the end. Right? So many people, at least based on the data set that I collected, would use Tagalog derived version of it. And then also like masi and din, right? How do you say it? Like what din, right? To mean like I'm still there. So there's a general tendency, although there's more variation, right? Like 44% would still use masi, but 56% would use din, Or we can actually use both at the same time. Imagihalin, di ba? Okay, and then for really siya talaga, there you go. We have way more people using talaga. In Kensa and Ulit, the Hokkien version is much more used. Okay, here's going to be a snapshot of what I've been doing so far, and then we also have like innovative structures such as this one, which is from a bird. I think the point here is that Lannang is very innovative, so we have structures that are actually really unique, such as this very interesting structure, patampo-tampo ta, so it's like patampo-tampo. It's a very Filipino structure, right? Patampo-tampo, right? So apart from that, we have also other innovations at the morphological level. Who here has taught themselves using Tagalog prefixes? For example, buhay katrabaho, ka-trabaho, or right? Or nakapatong or nakapagya. Pagkalanang. So we have lots of possibilities, but usually when it comes to prefixes, we usually take it from Tagalog. It's really weird for a lot of people to use English prefixes or suffixes in Lannang way. Okay? At the syntactic level or structural level, grammatical level, there are also some tendencies. So in my research, I found that people, when asking double H questions, so who, why, what, where, how, there's also variation because sometimes for people who say, for example, for the first one, kana din bitaw, sometimes people say din kana bitaw, or kana din bitaw, din kana din bitaw, right? Same goes for other questions like shami. Inisang shami. Some people say shami, ay inisang. Right, so there is a lot of variability, but based on my research, people tend to more frequently use kind of at the beginning for why, but for all other like how, when, where, object, when, object, what, you'll use it at the end, like in the tong shang, in the tong shang. But a lot of people tend to put the kana at the beginning instead of after the subject. Okay? Alright, so what did you learn from the examples so far? We know that the way the Manila Lannangs engage in mixed practices or mixed languages show some commonalities, but also, or rather similar ways of using language. But very importantly, we know that there's a lot of variability, right? It's not just one kind of language. I think Marvin has made a really good point. It's a myth, right? People in the Lannang community don't just use Hokkien, use the Lannang way in just one way. There are many ways of using it. And here we're just talking about Manila, metropolitan Manila. I'm 100% sure that if you go to Zamboanga, if you go to Cebu, Iloilo, we will witness very, very different variations of Lannang way as well. But also, there are some commonalities, I think. We also learned that Lannang way exhibits predominantly Sinitic features or Hokkien source features at all levels of language. However, a portion of these elements do show non-Sinitic characteristics or non-Chinese characteristics, including innovative derivations from Tagalog and English. Okay? And some of these innovations are very specific to the Lannang community. So, for example, what do you call this? This example, patampo-tampo. That is very, I think, very Lannang. Like, it's really hard to kind of like attribute it like 100% to this Tagalog because the usage here is pretty interesting. I think there are also other examples, like for example, kai kwek, right? I noticed the people who actually use the word kai as a unit by itself instead of treating it as kai kwek, they just treat kai as one word. So kai kwek, ibag kai kwek, even if our kai kwek, kai lang, or it could be, the e could refer to anything. It doesn't have to be just a person or a third person. Okay? Anyway, so that's kind of like what we learned from the language part. So from the bottom up, we do notice that Lannang way does not really fall neatly in the Chinese and non-Chinese categories. So given the variability, given how complex it is, it's really hard to say that, oh, that's 100% Chinese, that's 100% non-Chinese, right? It kind of falls in between the spectrum, right? Which raises a question, right? How much Chinese or Sinitic elements must there be to be considered Chinese, right? Okay, so I'll stop there and I'll move on to the other part of the research, which is the sociolinguistic findings. I'll be answering the following questions. So, according to speakers, what does it mean to be Chinese or Lannang? And what I'll be doing here, so why am I showing you this first is because I'll present these social findings, and then later at the end of the presentation, I'll be combining both the linguistic and the social to kind of like give a more holistic account. So for the social linguistic findings, we found that that many people tend to view Chinese as being in opposition with being Filipino, and we also found that for many, there's actually no distinction between Chinese here and Chinese out there. So this will be much clearer in the examples that I will be showing. So the first one is the Filipino versus Lannang contrast, or Pana contrast. So I'll just play the video, the audio for you to kind of like play. For those who do not understand Lannang, there are English subtitles underneath the text.
Napalang cho chơi Philippines lang ho, Pana. 我有感覺是我無歡喜咯，可是我是Lannang。我是正的Lannang，但我無愛人叫我Pana。
Right, so here's very clear, right? There's a Pana versus Lannang kind of contrast, which I think a lot of us are familiar with. And then, but there are also some instances where being Lannang and Chinese it's hard to disentangle this. For many people, Lannang is being Chinese.
Tiểu trai si anh nên trả vì bình thường này, vì đi khi ở đây có cả đi Singapore bộ sang Lannang luôn không, đi Taiwan si khoa lên as Hoa Kiều, ở này có đi Singapore lại Lannang, ai si Philippines lại Lannang cái bộ.
Right, so Singapore Lannang, like Singapore Lannang versus Philippine Lannang, right? So treating Lannang as Chinese, so that's one trend that we see. There are also other themes that emerge when we ask the question, what does it mean to be Chinese, or what does it mean to be Lannang? So here's the overview of it, and I'll go into them one by one, but we do see some themes like speaking pure Hokkien, engaging in multilingual practices involving Hokkien or Lannang, and others. So I'll be going into each one of them one by one. So one salient theme is authenticity through language, basically saying that to be a Lannang, to be a real Lannang, you need to speak Lannang way, I think. Okay, so here's one audio clip.
即係Lannang就是咱學南國嘅，咱嘅 practice 呢，咱嘅 culture，咱嘅學表，yan importante rin mga character, yun.
Right, so of course Lannang way, right? And there's also other things that are included in the hallmark of true Lannang. And then there's also authenticity in language maintenance. So you're a real Lannang or a real Chinese if you are maintaining your language, or if you have a closer version. The closer you are to the pure version, the pure style of Hokkien, then you are more Chinese, or more Lannang apparently for this person. So here, I don't have the audio clip, but it says, because Hokkien, hybrid Hokkien, or silent tongue, it still shows an effort that this person still wants to learn Hokkien, but the goal is still to get a pure variety according to this person, because this one would be like a substandard Hokkien. So still, people in the community tend to view the pure style of Hokkien as more superior than mixed style Lannang way. Okay. And then some people also mention that maybe it's not like that. Maybe I can also mix my language intentionally to indicate that I am a local Lannang. I am a local Chinese, right? So, and we see that in this excerpt where people said that they should not stick to pure Hokkien, because we actually live in the Philippines. There's no point in using a pure Hokkien if our context is a local context, right? And then there's also this theme that maybe Chinese blood isn't that important to be considered Chinese. So it's not blood, but culture that trumps blood, okay?
咱家大部分嘅 mix 咯，pero 有咧，假係有嘅老母是話菲律賓人，pero 老爸Lannang，pero 因出來那是Lannang，睇 still 會做啲講是Lannang pa rin na，容易。咱家。
Okay, so there are some interesting findings we can glean from here. One, we know that the community holds very strong ideologies regarding who is authentic Chinese or Lannang, and it's often associated with speaking Chinese or speaking Lannang way. However, like in practice, the definition of Chinese or Lannang is pretty much arbitrary and fluid. It depends on the situation. as it has been observed to be inclusive of both pure Hokkien speakers as well as those engaging in mixed multilingual practices involving Hokkien. So the point here is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to speak pure Hokkien and be pure blood Chinese, but many people said that as long as you incorporate some effort to incorporate it somewhere in your daily life, then you can be considered Lannang. Okay, now that was Lannang. What does it mean to be Lannang? And now we move on to Lannang Way, okay? And many people, when they ask, like, what does it mean to speak Lannang Way, there are two major camps, right? The major camp, the dominant answer, is basically Hokkien without Tagalog or English, just pure Hokkien. The less popular answer is the mixed language, the very halo-halo sarang-sarang. And there are also some themes that emerged out of the interview responses. One of them is that general multilingualism is a part of our mixed identity. So this person said that if you like using Filipino, you should not forget Chinese or Hokkien because it's really connected to our group of people. So basically, it's saying that in order to speak Lannang Way, you have to use different languages. Another trend, another observation that I made was that people kind of like relied on this like more temporal aspect of like recounting what Lannang Way is, saying that in the past, when we talk about Lannang Way, it's the pure variety, but now it's Lannang Way means the mixed variety. So there's a temporal dimension to it, a time dimension to it. Then we also have another theme, which is that the mixed language style of Lannang Way is inferior or an act of dilution, right? And I think this theme has actually served us a lot in the first day, right? Where people would say, we should speak this, your Lannang Way is really bad because it's mixed, but then they use the mixed language to scold the other person. So it's like medyo schizophrenic. Like in your head, you're saying that you want to be pure, but your mouth is saying another thing, right? So it's actually a term I think in social linguistics, like linguistic schizophrenia, where your attitudes don't match your production of language, right? So. And then, however, let's not just focus on the negative. So, although some people view the mixed language style of Lannang Way as inferior or a diluted version of Hokkien, many people also consider the mixed language as very positive and very normal, right? So this person, for example, says that it's normal, but recognizes that some people don't like listening to mixing, but according to them, we should speak in pure languages, whether Tagalog, English, or Chinese. But then this person said that they're very comfortable already using the mixed language. Alright? And then another interesting thing that I found was that the mixed language is not necessarily deliberate, right? Many of the times we just use it because sanay na, right? Sanay na, we're already used to it. So it's not necessarily an agentive act, but something that emerged, right? Out of like exposure to a lot of languages, exposure to your parents' way of mixing languages. And then another theme is that a mixed language or a mixed style of Lannang Way is an act of belonging or evoking comfort. That people find more comfort when that person is mixing rather than when they're just using pure straight Hokkien. So it kind of like decreases the social distance between two people. Right, so if you're mixing, I feel more comfortable, I feel more belong, like what one of our speakers they once said, the act of belonging, right? But also, although there are people who say that it's just something that's more passive that just happens, some people do mention that they use a mixed language to actually deliberately or intentionally to kind of like construct a sense of community and for ease of communication, right? So this person, for example, said that the mixed language is part of our community. It's something common that we use to communicate better to pure Hokkien. There are, I think, two more themes. The second to last one is that that mixed language, mixed Lannang Way, is a secret language as an unconscious process of accommodation, right? So this person said, for example, kaya fellow feel shy. Yeah, kasi parang it's like you have a unique secret language. Hindi naman secret, pero parang we get to understand each other even if we have that would have pare-pare way. Maybe from English, from Tagalog, but we understand the full context of that being talked about. And then I said, pero di naman kamkam si intentional. And the person said, I think it just grew with us. Like we tried to be inclusive or to adjust to this, to the Filipinos, and then slowly, subconsciously, we took some of the words and mixed it with our words. And then, if usitan mo rin suki na parang, ay, sige, Hokkien na lang. Like, it's no longer Hokkien, right? So it's really, for some people, it's a secret language, but it's also unconscious, right? And you just realize it when you are speaking it. And then finally, we have the final one, which is mixing practices. Is basically a differentiation act, like an act of identity that distinguishes the group from Filipinos, from non-Lannang Filipinos, Westerners, and even the newcomers or mainlanders, right? So this person said, if I speak a little bit of Tagalog, English, and Lannang way, you, Lannang, can understand me. Filipinos, mainlanders, Americans won't understand me, right? So it's kind of like an in-group thing as well. Also kind of like an identity, a language of identity. So, according to speakers, what does it mean to speak Lannang way? Again, just to recap, we've seen that all agree that it involves some sort of Hokkien. Some refer to it as a pure Hokkien variety or pure Hokkien style. Some refer to it as the mixed Hokkien style, while others refer to it as its own distinct language. So there's a lot of opinions. That's why it's actually one of the reasons why the symposium was built, was to kind of like see what people think about this concept of Lannang way. There are also some interesting patterns that I've raised earlier, such as the idea of linguistic schizophrenia. Again, to recap, linguistic schizophrenia means that some people say they don't want to mix, but they actually mix when they're saying it, right? There's also certain speakers incorporate mixing practices that could be considered non-Chinese in specific situations. However, they would still identify themselves as speaking or using Chinese or Lannang way. And then there are also people who refer to Lannang way as pure, but really in practice they actually use it to refer to the mixed variety. So I actually encountered this in my interviews a lot. I've been 140 interviews, and I really intentionally use the mixed style of Lannang way when I conduct interviews. And many of them would say, "Wow, that's Lannang way." Right? Even if you really follow the definition of Lannang way as Chinese, pure Chinese, then that's absolutely wrong, right? So it's kind of like people recognize that unconsciously that the mixed language is part of Lannang way. Just people think that Lannang way is pure, but in practice, it's actually not pure. We also find two other interesting patterns. One, recruitment of various linguistic resources, like Tagalog and English resources, for identity building and meaning making. And we see this on two grounds. One, multilingualism, right? So some people use just pure Hokkien, some people use the mixed language. There are also situations when people or speakers who could co-mix would say that they use Chinese within a local church, but would not necessarily use the term Chinese to identify their language in other contexts. So maybe a situation where, in Taiwan, for example, a family would go there and we would speak in very mixed Lannang way, and people on the train would say, what are you speaking? What language are you using? So we are Hokkien way or Fujianhua, Minanyu. And it's like, that's not Minanyu, right? So, and then we kind of like say, no, so we're not really Chinese version, no, we're Lannang. And then they're like, oh, okay, so do you see what I mean? Like, there are situations where we would co-use it. We would kind of use the labels quite loosely. We would say Chinese in this situation, but in other situations, we try to qualify, kind of reduce the Chineseness and increase the Filipino-ness of the identity, yeah? We also, one important finding is that there are very strong social underpinnings. So we tend to think of Lannang way as language, as something that's very linguistic, but to be honest, it's much more social than linguistic, right? So maybe back in the day, right, community back then has a very strong sense that pure is good, but it seems to be a very old sentiment. But still, a lot of people still believe in this has very strong purist ideology that there should only be pure Hokkien. We also find, in terms of social underpinnings, we find that many cite accommodation to Filipino culture, right, or being assimilated slowly or gradually being part of the Filipino culture as one of the driving forces of mixed language existence, right? They would say, oh, we come here in the Philippines, we learn, we've been here for so long, and we passively receive influence from the local group, right, for example. And then, as Lannang developed, we've also found that younger people are adopting the mixing practice. It's also an interesting finding. So I realize it's not just me that's thinking about this. There's some younger people that are also intentionally saying that the mixed language is positive, very positive, and something that represents the Lannang community in the Philippines. Because it proves to be told, right? Apart from accent, like as Marvin said the first day, it's very similar, right? It's just the differences in tone. But if you actually intentionally include like structural changes, like changes in grammar, changes in vocabulary, like lots of Tagalog and English, and even other Philippine languages, it becomes something really, really unique to us, right? So zooming out, right? The findings also then provide evidence of a recently or locally negotiated Chinese or Lannang language identity that has both social and linguistic underpinnings, right? So in terms of development, right? We can safely say that we're still in the process, right, of like of identity formation. Like, what I mean by this is that we still can't really agree on what it means to be Lannang or Lannang yet. That's why one of the reasons why the symposium was also kind of like created is to kind of see whether do we actually have to define Lannang and Lannang. If so, then how? How do we define it? Given this much variability in perceptions, right? Is Lannang Chinese, Filipino Chinese, Chinoy, or its own other thing, right? What is the scope of Lannang in Lannang way? And we also found evidence of potential shifts, if not enhancements in meaning, but maybe these new meanings are actually being pressured or kind of suppressed by dominant community ideologies that pure is better than mixed, right? Similar, it's also very similar to this ideology that Tia Lannang, or being pure Chinese, is better than Susia, which is better than Wana, right? It's like, so it kind of like reflects, language kind of reflects the social kind of like expectations as well, right? Or understandings of society and race. Yeah. So interestingly, also my research also found that there's age variation, basically. So here we see on the left screen, we have a portion of informants who reported using Cantonese, English, Hokkien, Lannang, and Tagalog as a language of the home. Here I'm distinguishing, I know that Hokkien and Lannang is interchangeable by a lot of people, but for this interview, I told my participants that Lannang here refers to Saalam Tam. So as you can see here, on the right side of the screen, you see bars, right? Yellow bar, blue bar. Yellow bar is Lannang or mixed style Hokkien. And then Hokkien is in blue. Older people, we have 80 to 99, 60 to 79, 40 to 59, 22 to 39, and 10 to 21. Right? So Hokkien use, as in its pure sense, has been notably decreasing. And this is one sample of like 100 and something people. And then in terms of attitudes, we also see some difference, some age rating or the influence of age, where older people would be less likely to say that Lannang in its mixed form would be reflective of their mixed identities. But younger people say, yes, it is part of our language or our culture, our mixed hybrid identity. Older people tend to regard the mixed version as bastardized, whereas younger people are less likely to agree that it is bastardized. So why should you care about all these findings? So far I've been telling you the linguistic side of things, the social linguistic side of things. Why should I care about attitudes? Why should I care about language? So my research has shown me, at least for the past 5, 7, 8 years, has told me that attitudes and language use are very tightly intertwined. If one person has more positive attitudes towards Lannang, for example, then they're also more likely to use Lannang in its mixed sense. For those who have negative attitudes towards mixing Lannang, they're more likely to also randomly mix. You can find the patterns in their Lannang use. So it's intertwined. If you yourself believe that Lannang is mixed Lannang is random, then you're also more likely to randomly use your words. But if you say that Lannang way is more reflective of your mixed identity, or more system, or you have better attitudes towards it, then you're also more systematic. You would use kasi for Tagalog. You get, in Lannang way, you would use kasi for because, pero for but, and you know, the very systematic way of like mixing language. So here's just a kind of a short clip that shows the dynamic, the relationship between attitudes and language. Attitude and language use.
Nan vậy chứ hả lộn kasi ko有一個部分嗰啲愛我哋講學英語白領啦，但係我自己諗嗰啲愛可以關係講英語白領啦，係啊。
Right. So this person is the most mixed person. The person who used the most mixed, most high version of Lannang way. And this person is also coincidentally that person who rated highest on the scale on it being reflective of their identity. Right? So it seems that she's really deliberately using those Tagalog words into their Hokkien to kind of like reflect their kind of like attitudes towards the language as well. Another reason why we should care about Lannang way is because language attitudes actually do contribute very strongly to identity building. If you have negative attitudes towards the language, whether it's a mixed language or a pure style, then it's really hard to kind of like form that identity, right? Because attitudes and language, they're both linked, and if we do not use their link, if we do not foster positive attitudes and stay maintained, for example, purist conservative ideologies, the current unique language or the mixed style Lannang way that will slowly disappear, right? And I think we've seen that in the first day. In the first day, people have noted that maybe the mixed style is more it's kind of like dying out because it's only used by people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But younger people are starting to use more pure style Hokkien, right? They're trying to say that Lannang way is pure style Hokkien, not this. Whatever you saw, whatever I presented earlier, it's not actually Lannang way. But I think a lot of older people, middle-aged people would disagree and say that's basically how we speak, right? And there's actually very strong evidence that this very mixed and unique language is already disappearing. Because if you try to see the proportion of people, basically, who are using, proportion of informants who reported using Tagalog, English, Hokkien, Mandarin, Lannang way, Cantonese, and Taiwanese as native tongues, by age, we see that in Lannang way, you see that it increases for middle-aged people and then it decreases for young people. So many younger people are no longer regarding Lannang way, here meaning the mixed style Hokkien Lannang way as dominant or as their native tongue, right? But Hokkien, you actually see a little uptick, right? Younger people are starting to say, I don't speak Lannang, I speak more Hokkien, I speak the more pure style of Lannang way. Right, so you're regarding that as their native tongue and not the mixed style of Lannang way. Okay, it's also kind of reflected here. I don't want to get too much into it, but I also did a study where I tried to analyze based on self-reported proficiency and self-reported frequency of language use. And we do see that Hokkien, that proficiency in Lannang way, according to them, is pretty much stable. Hokkien is decreasing, and younger people are starting to report increased proficiency in Hokkien, in pure style Lannang way. So if you're interested, I have an article on that which you can search online or you can approach me later if you're more interested in this. But the point here is that everything is linked, right? The attitudes, language use, and even language shift patterns, right? They're all related. And so what is the solution to this? To this decline of the very hybrid and mixed style of Lannang way. For me, personally, based on what I've been doing so far, I recommend that if you don't want this hybrid language or culture to die out, I think that naming or branding is really, really important. The faster we agree that Lannang way and Lannang, the terms, can mean the hybrid language and all of its various styles that reflect the reality today and not the reality then when our ancestors came, then the faster we are to remedy this problem. Because currently, right, when you say Lannang, Well, the original meaning is literally our people, right? And somehow maybe in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, people started to regard Lannang and combine it as, and analyze it as Chinese, right? In its broad sense. But then recently, like really recently, some people have actually started to distinguish Lannang as in Lannang. Those who have ancestors in the 1900s, immigrants, like people who escaped famine, ancestors who escaped famine, the war, for example, that's the specific group. And those who just came, like in the 1990s, 2000s, they're not Lannang anymore. So there's kind of like a new meaning that's starting to emerge. Maybe Lannang literally means it's a very specific subgroup, right? That could be used to distinguish between Filipino, non-Lannang Filipinos, mainlanders, and other possible groups. So there's a potential for this term to also gain additional meaning in addition to our people, literally, like Lannang or Danlang, Chinese, and also literally Lannang, right? This the group that we have. A term that can emphasize general differences between our group and other Chinese and Filipinos, and groups as well as other similarities. So you might actually wonder, how is it possible to think of Lannang as a term to include Filipino-ness, Chinese-ness, and also Lannang-ness? Isn't that a paradox, right? Can you, as a Lannang, can you be Filipino? Can you be Chinese? Can you be neither? Can you be both? Based on my research, I think it's possible to do this because one way of thinking about Lannang identity is that it's very fluid. It's not just Chinese, but you can also think of Lannang identity as being Filipino. There are certain situations where, as a Lannang, you would say you stress your Filipino-ness more. For example, when talking to your Filipino, non-Lannang Filipino friends, or certain situations where people are asked, oh, I know, what do you think about the West Philippine Sea or South China Sea or whatever? Or the Alice Go incident, right? So you find ways to creatively, take a stance, right? Or which side are you on for this particular moment? But that doesn't take away from the fact that you're still Lannang in general, right? So this is one way of thinking about the Lannang identity, which I proposed back in 2021. However, Lannang way, right? We can also start to kind of see parallels, right? If you say Lannang way Lannang can gain additional meanings, Lannang way could also technically gain additional meanings as well. So the original meaning of Lannang way is literally the language of our people, or the tongue of our people, meaning pure Hokkien, language that we use that Filipinos don't use. But Lannang way could also literally refer to the language of our people, the Lannang, right? Meaning the distinct hybrid language that we currently use, that other Hokkien-speaking people and Filipinos do not use, but also a language that shares influences from both. So it's kind of like an additional meaning, and this is actually backed up by some people who actually said this. It's not just me. I was really surprised at first sight because I thought it was just something that I created, but apparently some people are also starting to think this way, that Lannang way is Lannang way. It's our people, our unique language, and what is unique. It's not pure Hokkien, it's the mixed style Hokkien that's unique, not the pure one, not the old Hokkien, right? So, yeah, again, so I think using Lannang to refer to the cultural subgroup that tends to call itself pure Chinese, but in practice shows signs of hybridity, really shows great promise, I think. Okay? There are people, of course, just because they identify as Lannang doesn't mean that they don't identify as Chinoy, as Filipino, as Chinese as well, right? That's just the nature of identity. You can't really, it's so hard to put people in boxes just because our society is really, really complex. Okay, so I think we have Auntie Tessie here, who in 1990 kind of like mentioned this original criteria of what it means to be Chinese or Lannang. Auntie Tessie said that in order to be Lannang, you need to have some measure of Chinese parentage, speak and understand at least some Chinese language, has undergone some form of Chinese education, observes Chinese customs enough to be considered by themselves and their neighbors as Chinese, and also has some contact with the Chinese community. So what I'm proposing is, based on my recommendations, it's just what I think, okay? What if we use the term Lannang instead? Because Chinese is broad, right? Chinese could mean mainland Chinese. It has a lot of like other meanings as well. But we use Lannang to refer to Chinese with the double quotes, right? The localized Chinese, or even Chinoy, right? Then we could actually maybe take a step further, right, and try to make some progress in ensuring that the language and the mixed culture does not die. Okay, so again, just to recap, my recommendation is to use Lannang to capture the range of variability. I'm not saying we should use Lannang to only refer to the mixed language. I'm saying that we should be more inclusive in using Lannang to refer to both the mixed style, the pure style, and everything in between. Okay? That in itself, all of it is Lannang. Okay? So it's also possible to coexist or switch between different styles of Lannang, which happens a lot. So for example, with my family, I use a very mixed style of Lannang, but with my mainlander friends in Hong Kong, for example, who are from Fujian province, I just try my best to switch to a more pure style of Lannang. So it's possible to switch between styles. So yeah, I think reflecting on this a few years back, I thought that lobbying for this use of term Lannang and Lannang is actually really, really hard, because if it's just me, then obviously it won't fly, right? But Lannang and Lannang is actually already used by us, right? We use it a lot. We talk about it internally. So maybe I'm kind of like, what I'm proposing is maybe we could start thinking about maybe more consciously using the term Lannang and Lannang to be a more inclusive term that reflects all the varied practices, the variations of Lannang, as well as term Lannang to refer to a particular, to also include the very hybrid groups, so including Chinoys and also other possible subgroups. Yeah, so many people would say, oh, Lannang is very exclusive, right? Like, Lannang literally means our people, like, why should we use that? So, I guess our response to this would be to say, why should we hide something that is really part of us, right? If other people can be proud that they're Canadian, that they can be Filipino, for example, or they're Thai, or Peranakan in Singapore and Malaysia, why can't we also be proud of our own heritage? Literally, Lannang means our people, so it's underspecified. It doesn't have to mean just Chinese, right? There's always some additional potential for that term to be ours. We can actually reclaim the claimed term. Okay, so just because we're proud of our heritage, this is very important. Just because we're proud of our heritage does not mean we can be proud of other languages. Okay, that's a misconception. If I'm proud of Lannang, it doesn't mean I'm not proud that I can speak Filipino as well. Right? You can be proud of multiple languages. You can also be multilingual. Yeah? We already have the basic resources. We have a very rich Lannang history. We also have a very hybrid language. We also have the non-hybrid language. We also have a set of cultures that are already there. I think the important thing right now, and I think one of the things that I really want everyone to think about in this symposium, is to start connecting those things that make us really unique. Making those connections. Right? Because I remember from the interview, people actually didn't know that the term Lannang is actually used just by Philippine Hokkien speakers. In Singapore, when they ask them Lannang, they'll just say our people, but not the sense of community. When they say, oh, this is Lannang ba? Meaning, like, are you part of our group, or are you part of the Lannang group, right? So yeah, all we have to do is somehow recognize it, aggregate it, and be brave to create spaces of legitimization. So, for example, by naming a language as Lannang or Lannang, for example, we are already starting to claim the space, or trying to legitimize it as an actual language, right? So one of my goals in the long term, I'm not sure if it's going to happen, is to actually lobby for the word Lannang as a Philippine language, right? So exactly, this is a Philippine language. It has developed out of the Philippine context. So if people can say, oh, we can speak Baray, we have Hiligaynon, how about Lannang? Lannang developed basically the Philippines. It emerged because of Philippine history, right? Chinese contact, but yes, it's very Filipino experience. So that's one way in which we can legitimize. I'm not sure if it's going to happen in the future, but we're taking steps, right? So for example, creating storybooks, which is another project that I'm interested in doing. They're also using Lannang, for example, in film production, or which I think JP, who they're sitting there, has started to think about, or using Lannang in games. I'm not sure if Misha is here, but we are collabing with Solution Comics to create a board game in Lannang as well. So we're trying to use Lannang in more domains beyond the home, right? Because the perception is that Lannang is a home language. There's no point in you learning Lannang because it's just a home language. We need to learn Mandarin because it will give us more money in the future. Without kanji, blah 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 blah. But yeah, I think having Lannang is another additional capital. Right? If you learn more languages, then you also enrich your life. So the point here is that we just have to be really brave. We have to just start connecting the dots. We already have everything we need. We have very mixed culture, mixed history. We also have people, right? We're lucky enough that the Lannang community is not as discriminated as it was back in the day, right? So I think it's the perfect time to start thinking about where our community should move forward, how we can move forward in the next decade or so, right? So yeah, that's all I have for you. Hopefully I made you think about what Lannang is.
Alright, we have 15 to 20 minutes for questions, so I already see some hands.
Thank you, Will. You certainly raised a lot of thought-provoking questions, and I'm only asking these questions because I think they need to be asked. And if they appear to be like questions that seem to be critical of your aspirations, let's just approach it as something that could be constructive and productive. First of all, I have two questions, out of many, but I'll focus on the two main questions. First is, why do we need to preserve Lannang? Okay, what is the imperative to preserving it and to maintaining it amongst the Lannang community? What is that say? That's the first question.
Can I answer that first question first because I forget it.
Okay.
So I think it's important to preserve Lannang, at least from my stance, because Lannang it connects to my sense of identity and also my sense of self. Like I said, right, I think we also raised that a couple of times in the first day, is that when you lose, you know that feeling when you lose something, you lose someone in your life, very important. Like if you feel that kind of slowly drifting away, it makes you feel very sad, it makes you feel like you don't belong, right? So I think, for me at least, I approach it from a more identity perspective. Like I think that preserving our very unique culture is something that I don't want to lose, and that's why I have to preserve Lannang. That's for me. I don't know what other people think, but
that's a long discussion.
Yeah.
But thank you. Secondly is, you mentioned that language is a strong indicator or index of Lannang identity, right? So what happens if a person does not speak Lannang? Is the person still Lannang or not?
That is a really good question that I don't have an answer for as of this point. Because I know people's experiences with Lannang, the term Lannang and Lannang are also very different. For me, from my perspective, I think that if you don't speak Lannang, but you do have all the other characteristics, I think, like this, for example, like you got a Lannang school, observe some kind of custom, I think, or have some contact with Lannang community, then yes. Because for me, like I said, I don't want to be very exclusive about it. I mean, as long as you're able to make some effort in trying to learn it, I think you want to reconnect to your heritage. I would still consider you Lannang. That's me. But again, you know that this is, I can't speak for everyone, right? And all of us have our own experiences with Lannang and how we view people, how other people define Lannang, and how that kind of reflects on you as well. Yeah, so that's for me. I think Lannang, I want it to be more inclusive, so if they don't speak Lannang as long as they try and they have all other criteria, they have the same set of values, then maybe, yeah, they'll be more likely to be perceived as Lannang, at least for me.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. At the back, please approach a bit.
Okay, so before I head to my question, a very word about paradox. When you mention paradox, I think it's very thought-provoking because also a bit about me. So I come from Akron, and observing how family friends tend to speak, for example. I find it like interesting that, at least in a linguistic perspective, that there's a lot of code switching, and there's like this view towards, oh, you should speak more, or you should speak this more, try not to keep it things and all that. And it just got me thinking that, oh, let's say Metro Manila, there's like a mix between Hokkien, Tagalog, and English. But then I thought to myself, is it the same for other provinces?
Exactly, yeah.
So, okay, I won't speak for everyone, but for Tacloban, I'm from Tacloban, whenever I speak to my Ayan, specifically my Ayan in the settings, we would often like mix between Hokkien and Walay. And that got me thinking, and sometimes English and Tagalog, depending on the context or the mood. And that got me thinking, would it be like would that also like fall under an way? For example, let's say if you move to Cebu, if someone would speak Cebuano, or let's say to other regions, so would it also like kind of fall under when you say Hokkien plus regional language,
that's a really
third language?
Can I answer that question? So my research again is I acknowledge the limits of my work. I know that all this research is done in the Metro Manila context. And according to people who say Lannang, and asked to tell a story in Lannang, the dominant frame is Hokkien with some Tagalog and English. Or in most extreme cases, there'll be some structural changes. Like people have the Filipino grammar, but then the words are English or Hokkien. Right, Tagalog grammar, but in Hokkien words, right? So it depends. So my question is, in the Tacloban context, do people call that Lannang?
That's the thing. They have like different things. Where it's either, well, let's say if you're speaking to someone who can't speak an American, or basically they can't like understand. So they would say speak in Chinese, but if they understood, they would say Lannang way or Hokkien way. So it's like interesting.
Right. So if people do say Lannang, then you have to follow their definition. Then by definition, it is also part of Lannang. And so how I account for differences is that you can say, yes, in the Philippines, Hokkien maybe a language involves Hokkien and a mixture of like Philippine languages and English, for example, is the general broad definition of Lannang. But then the Philippine language content will depend on which region you're from. So I'm born in Iloilo, and we Iloilo Chinese community or Lannang community mixes in the and English a lot, way more than people in Manila, right? So sometimes to the point that you're not even sure it's Lannang anymore, but it's like so mixed with each other, so intertwined that you really can't identify the boundaries of Hokkien, Tagalog, and English anymore. But yeah, I would still consider, from my perspective, I think that we have to be inclusive. If people themselves use the term Lannang to refer to that mixture, then yes, let's follow that. That's my proposal.
So like also that me thinking, like for example, so you have this big superset of Lannang. So what I think is that maybe it's possible there are like variants. So for example, there's Hokkien for let's say Metro Manila, or let's say in my case, there's what I hope would like it. Or maybe what I call it one or the second. But anyway, the point is that I think that what would like encapsulate Lannang with better. I'd say Lannang with the L because that's how I was taught back then. Anyway, so I think it's just a suggestion that to like better encapsulate Lannang way, I think it would be also nice to include the variant spoken words. Say in my place from Loban or
yes,
but like the whole Philippines.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
like, it also makes me like, oh, Philippines speak their American Telugu is, there's like lots of linguistic groups here and there, so I'm certain that there are also variants of the way out there is different.
Yes.
Just different groups and friends.
We have some form of representation, right? Okay, cool. So yeah, for sure, like, again, this is the whole part of the symposium, right? Is to figure out whether people, Lannang communities from other parts of the Philippines also identify with that Lannangness, that Lannang shared commonalities, right? So if you guys feel like it, then yes. I mean, I'm who am I to gatekeep? To be honest, like this, if you feel like it, then yes, definitely be part of Lannang.
And that's
Thank you, Vinci. I think just to give time to other people too, you can maybe share that later. Sorry to cut you short, but we have a lot of raised hands, so I want to give time for others to talk. Dave?
So I'm Dave. Previously worked under the Lannang Archives as well, and I was wondering, like, I have an interesting story to tell, and what are your thoughts on, for example, using somewhat inaccurate things to refer to the language? Because there may be foreigners that may be unfamiliar. So, for example, when I was in Japan and I was with a fellow Lannang, and I was like, you see Lannang? Oh, and then the Japanese were like, Gingo, donna Gingo? They were like, what language is that? And then he was trying to say, Fukkiengo, and then Fukkienwan, nani, what is Fukkien? And then I was like, これは Taiwan. I said, oh, this is Taiwanese because Japanese people may be unfamiliar with Fukiensho or the province, but they're more familiar with calling it Taiwanese instead.
Right.
And I would also add like Tagalog to Eigo mazete. We mix it with English and Tagalog. So what are your thoughts on that? Thank you.
Right. So in terms of like, do we have to correct people like when they misidentify us? For me, I like to approach it from more Asian perspective. Like because we're technically minority in the minority. Basically, we're from the Philippines and we're also like a minority in the Philippines. So I think it's really imperative to make conscious decisions, right, to assert identity. So maybe right now, maybe we just say, oh, so you want to be comfortable, just we're just Chinese, yeah, blah blah blah, Philippine Chinese, and period. Right, but for me, what I want to do, what I've been starting to do right in the past few years is to tell people, oh, are you like Hokkien speaker or whatever, or I tell them, oh, I'm a Lannang speaker. What's that? I'm a Lannang, right? Or Chinese Filipino, yes, or easy, but we tend to call ourselves Lannang. So I tell them my perspective, right? So that's one step towards kind of like addressing that. It's kind of like make more steps to consciously kind of like set, kind of like do branding, right? You're thinking, well, what's it? I'm Lannang, I'm Philippine Chinese, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, try to, I don't want to say educate them, but like just tell them who you are would be probably a good first step.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Thank you for that talk. So I was concerned with the future, especially regarding that slide. So since Lannang is like very still right now loosely defined, it's quite subjective. So how do we, let's say, determine what's Lannang heritage? Kasi even if we use a definition of parang yung mga migrants that came during until the mid-late 20th century, I would not say that my ama, for example, even if, let's say, Lannang siya, I don't think she would say necessarily na hindi rin siya tayo kasi I don't hear rin siya. But like ako naman, I personally do say that I am Lannang. So the question is like, to what extent is Lannang self-determined? Or like, parang may seeks approval from a community na observes Lannang kasi sila be considered by himself and their neighbors as Lannangs. Paano pag considers himself or themselves Lannang pero sa neighbors or sa community?
It's a really, really good question. Okay, so I think this goes back to the discussion of identity, right? Like how is identity formed? And many people like to think of identity as a two-way street, right? You identify as something, but other people also have to position you or perceive you as a certain way. It's very similar to gender, where you say, oh, what's ilame? Other people also have to recognize your lame, right? or something like that. So, or ethnicity, what's Lannang? A lot of people also think they're Lannang. Right, so to that extent, like if that person says they're basically don't have like parentage or ancestry from a particular region, so they maybe say, oh well, what's Lannang, for example, but then other people don't think they are because they're kind of like they're because of the style instead of Lannang. Then yeah, it's tough because we really can't gatekeep, right? But all this points to how complex identity is. Like we don't have an answer, right? Do we even have to answer the question? All right, do we have to define what Lannang is, what Lannang is? From my stance, I would say yes. We have to define it if we want to ensure the survival of the community in all the forms of Lannang there are. Yes, naming is really important. Making a strategic decision to define what Lannang is or what Lannang is definitely very, very important. And actually a strategy that a lot of people use around the world when trying to promote a minority group. Like if you hear the word LGBT, for example, they're also kind of like essentializing and saying that this group is, a group that they have to define. Being queer means being a lesbian, gay, transgender, or whatever, or bi, right? So it's very similar to how Lannang is. You have to kind of like define it somehow. I'm in no position to define what Lannang is, but I think this symposium has to maybe start a discussion on what it actually means to be Lannang that will kind of set a path for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years down the road. What I'm trying to say is that it's very important. Naming practices and branding and showcasing yourself to others is very important because it's also linked to attitudes towards the language. As we know, attitudes is also linked to how we internally use Lannang as well. Think about it. If other people say, oh, you speak Lannang in the Philippines, you're more likely to use it because now you're saying, oh, they recognize our language, so I'm more likely to use it now. I don't think it's a dead language. I don't think it's just a home language. It's a language that I use to represent my group, right? So yeah.
Can you go back to the 1990 version? Yeah. So in terms of identity, this is not created by this.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, but she
mentioned it.
Yeah, she uses it. But this is 1990. So there is a very big group of diasporic studies, Chinese diasporic studies, International Society of the Chinese Study of Chinese Overseas. Alright, so that's a big debate. That's a big discussion all over the world on who is ethnic Chinese, when are you an ethnic Chinese minority of a country. So that's a big conversation, and that's a long-standing conversation for the past 40 years. One of the things that's not there and in your enhanced criteria that's always in the criteria of any discussion is self-identification. So self-identification and public recognition that you are. One of the examples I use a lot for here in the Philippines is Apa Umpin. So everybody recognizes that he has Chinese heritage. His last name is Umpin. He's been Binondo, hello. But he does not identify as Chinese Filipino anymore. He recognizes that he has a Chinese ancestor. But he will not term himself as Lannang. And we also do not recognize him as Lannang, but fully recognize that he has Chinese heritage. I hope that helps.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for your feedback. So correction, that's not Chinese version, it's mentioned in the book, if I remember. So sorry about that. Typo.
Yeah. Yes, you. Sorry, I don't know everyone's name.
Hi, I'm Renny Gonzales from Lannang, senior and pol sci. And coming from the academic perspective, we really applaud first and foremost the use of this perspective because it's a mix of quality and quantity methods, and it does really back up. And it's hard to find and contest academic research papers based on qualitative studies alone. So it's I really look up to these studies. I saw this in ResearchGate before, and to encapsulate a diaspora alone, a loosely defined, subjective, flexible term, and to add, it has to be self-identified first, and then kapag na-recognize ka ng ibang tao, busy Lannang. So, in order to connect then, the question my question lang is on social accommodations.
Yeah.
Because I have seen the literature, the research is very rich. The problem is there's little to no nuancing on how we shift from these types of framework na pagiging ay less Chinese na siguro ako or more Filipino ako in this social context. When I'm in school, when I'm in a social reunion, kapag kasama ko ba sina lolo ko, sina lola ko, or kapag kami lang magkakaibigan, paano kaya ina-adjust ko yung pagiging Chinese ko? And is that an inherent Lannang trait? For us to always please people, for us to socially accommodate people, for us to always live with them, even if they have more or a spot less of Chinese. Ang connect lang din with the previous, I think it's a reaction to the mixed variety of baka merong Lannang na Hokkien, na Nawaray Hokkien version, and then should we name them? Us personally, kami ni Elizabeth, we came from Zamboanga ulit, so we're really far down south. Ang neighbor namin, Malaysia na. Like, it's just a hop away, and ang flight namin papunta dito sa Manila ay 2 hours. Eh, isang barko lang papunta kami sa Malaysia. Ganun siya kalayo, para kami nagtataiwan, para kami nagja-Japan. Pero, minimum there, we speak at least 4 or 5 languages. Because we have to socially accommodate to a place where kapag sinabi namin, pabili po, ang sasabihin ng mga neighbors namin, pabili po! Kasi we don't use Tagalog there. We don't use Filipino there. It's not practical. Pero, when Elizabeth, for example, came in and I noticed na she also came from Zamboanga, we never spoke as a spot of Lannang way. But we recognize each other as Lannang people. And again, yun yung discussion doon, na maybe Lannang as a loosely defined term is not really that bad of a thing. Yeah. Maybe it's a social tie, a red string, a fluid thing that connects us all. And I don't see, even if there's a force to standardize it, I think the loosely defined does accommodate us into exploring who we are as a people. So again, one, Lannang as a loosely defined must not be inherently something bad, but second, the accommodation, which suggestion could be parang how do we play the chess between Filipino, neither, Chinese, both? Kasi when we talk to certain different generations, people of academic levels or educations, we try to only socially accommodate them. So, ayun, a discussion on why we should pride ourselves with the loosely, even if sooner or later mahanapan natin ang standard definition. But second is, do you have working theories on bakit ang mga Lannang people are people pleaser? Bakit tayo na
That's a really good question. Okay, so I should note that this notion of people pleasing is not just specific to Lannang people. Si Lannang lang la, okay? So everyone, inherently human, people please. And in social linguistics, we like to call that style accommodation or stylistic accommodation. Okay? So we change styles. Like for example, when I'm talking to Tina, I usually use Taglish. When at home, I switch to, when I talk to my parents, I switch to Lannang way. Right? With my brother, I only speak English with him. I don't use a speck of Lannang way. Only English. Weird come in. But yeah, it also has to do with this, right? Like me and my brother, we more identify as Filipino. We try to take a stance na Filipino kami, so we use Philippine English a lot. But with my parents, syempre gusto nila na, this is Lannang, hindi ako Lannang way. So syempre Lannang way, and when I'm talking with a lot of the people, like church people, for example, Lannang way din. Even if they using Taglish, I assert si Lannang. Or I assert that I am Lannang, so I use Lannang way. So yeah, for sure. This whole situation, stylistic accommodation, is not just a Lannang thing, but it's happens everywhere. I think you also can switch between different styles of Filipino, right? You can switch to like El Filibustros mo or Florida levels of Tagalog if you wanted to, and you can switch to very casual Tagalog with lots of English mixing as well, right? So it's not very specific. Okay, so before I end, I think, I just really want to mention a very important finding. When I was actually engaging with some people, like possible collaborations from Sulu, right? Actually, the term Lannang is not an endonym, not just used within the Lannang community, but they actually use the term Lannang to refer to the local Chinese. It doesn't happen in Manila. In Manila, it's Chinoy, Inche, a lot of other terms, right? Or Chinese, or Phil-Chai, Chinoy, Chinese Filipino. But in Cebu, in the southern part of the Philippines, I was so surprised that they actually use the term Lannang to refer to local Chinese. So I was thinking maybe there's a possibility in the future that this could actually apply to all other provinces or cities in the Philippines. But yeah, that's not for me to say, but it's something for us to ponder about, right? The term Lannang is very versatile, it's underspecified. Lannang little means our people, so it's up to us to define what it is, right, for the next coming years. So,
very short topic.
Okay.
Last, just to add to the confusion, maybe it's also important because all of what you discussed a while ago is the social cultural identity. But as you said, when you talk to your brother, you consider yourself Filipino. Just like all of us, we consider ourselves Chinoy. Pinoy is the noun. Chino or Chinese is the modifier. We are Chinese Filipino. That's why yesterday I was emphasizing that we use Chinese Filipino because Filipino Chinese used to be referring to Chinese who happen to be in the Philippines. But now we are Chinese Filipinos. We are Filipinos politically. We are loyal to this country. We are economically Filipino. What we earn goes to the Philippines. But we are proud of our Lannang heritage and legacy. The social-cultural identity as Lannang has to be preserved, has to be promoted. But do not forget that the primary identity is Filipino. We are Chinoy, Chinong Pinoy, which we took pains to popularize in the 90s. Because of the Alice Go mentality since the 1990s, when they headline Chinese criminal, Chinese something. So we had to emphasize that maybe it's time to differentiate, like the Peranakans, the Babas, we also have the choice. Thank you.
Yeah, choice. Yeah, for sure. And we should really not forget that, yes, and that's also something I've been trying to lobby for, is that when we say Lannang, I don't really want to believe that it's Chinese. It is a very Filipino concept as well. The experience of having to find people to cling to each other in times of hardship. Lannang, as we experience the same thing, is a Filipino thing inherently. So we can't say that it's just Chinese. It also intersects, like with what Mom Bessie said, with Filipiness, like Chinoy identity. You can't disentangle them. They're all connected to each other, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for the comments and for listening to my
talk. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we can't accommodate everyone's questions, but of course, Will be here until tomorrow.